Everyone, I am doing my presentation today on the literacy concept of prosody and reading comprehension and how they are connected. So of course we have to begin by asking ourselves, what is prosody? It's not one of those words that easily lends itself to figuring out the definition from context. So we have to understand prosody is expressiveness. It is not reading like a robot, but it is the ability to change your voice in ways that are appropriate with the text that you're reading. So, along with accuracy and rate, prosody is one of the elements of fluency as part of reading instruction. It has been known as the music of speech. And in their book, Know Better, Do Better, Lieben and Lieben give us some great elements of prosody, such as appropriate phrasing, like when students are able to cluster words that belong together, then they understand phrasing. When you pause briefly within and between sentences. See what I did there? Leading by example. Stressing certain words or phrases. Rising and falling pitch that matches the text. Whatever it is that you are doing with your voice, it needs to be appropriate to the text that you are reading. Now, there is a really fun Go Noodle video, if you haven't seen it, by Blazer Fresh. It's called Don't Read Like a Robot. And I love to do it with my kids every year. And they get really into it. And they're like, and read it like this. And it's just funny. So anyways, if you haven't seen it, check it out. Moving on. So the question is now, what is the link between prosody and reading comprehension? Why do those things necessarily go hand in hand? There were some researchers who wanted to know the same thing. And so they did a study to figure out the connection. And what they did was they investigated different studies that had already been done, trying to find the links between automaticity, prosody, and comprehension. So they found a number of studies and they figured out what they could take away. What are the main takeaways from all these studies that are connected? What are some results that have been figured out about the connection between these things? And here's what they discovered. So in order for a student to really be able to understand prosody, to be able to read with expression, decoding and automaticity have to come first. Students who are young, probably kindergarten, first grade, they might be able to get to a point where they're reading with prosody, but the main idea at that age is figuring out how to decode words and making sure that your automaticity comes first. Because without that, the children's brains are not going to be able to keep up with trying to read with expression, and they're not going to have that full reading comprehension. So that piece is key. So another thing that they found in all these studies that was consistent is that as reading skills increase in a student, the reading pauses decrease. And they're not just talking about pauses at appropriate places like at the end of sentences, although that's part of it, but they're talking about pauses in the middle of sentences to figure out words, ungrammatical pauses, and pauses at the end of sentences that are too long, pauses at punctuation that are too long. They found that those things decrease as reading skills get better. They discovered that the link between prosody and reading comprehension gets stronger as the students get older and as they advance to higher grades, which makes sense if you think about the fact that decoding and automaticity have to come first, right? So that lays the foundation. And then once they have that, the older they get, it makes more sense that the prosody would be linked with the reading comprehension. There were other researchers who did a similar study trying to figure out that link between prosody and reading comprehension. And some of the results that they discovered were similar. They found that adult-like intonation contour, those are big words, in reading was positively associated with reading comprehension. So essentially, the more that a person was able to read in the way that an adult would read, then that showed a positive correlation with their reading comprehension. Third grade readers who used greater changes in pitch, so going up and down with their voice, and end sentence declinations. So if the end of your sentence goes down because you're done speaking your sentence, those students were able to perform better in reading comprehension. They found that there is a correlation between prosody and reading comprehension from grades 3 and on up, they discovered. So, but prosody and reading comprehension, as we said before in the other study, as they discovered, they rely on being able to read well. So this study confirms that fact, that, in all of the studies that they did, they discovered that that foundation has to be there, decoding and automaticity. But where does speech prosody come into all this? Speech prosody being not necessarily reading out loud, but being able to just talk to someone without reading and use prosody in your voice. Well, the researchers of this study wanted to find the answers to that question too. So what they did is they did a study of 106 fourth graders in the Netherlands, and they gave them multiple different types of assessments that included text reading prosody and comprehension, and then speech prosody and comprehension. They wanted to see how these things were related. And it included some storytelling tasks, standardized tests, things like that. Some of the results that they discovered: speech production skills developed much earlier than reading skills. That is one thing that they kind of built the foundation of their study on, because that was something that they knew. So they thought it makes sense that children are going to be already speaking with prosody. How is that going to affect their ability to read with prosody? I went ahead and added a little picture on this slide of me reading out loud to my nephew, George. Now, George is 19 months old, and everyone in his life loves to read to him. And I think that we are really great about, giving him sort of an introduction to oral language, which is going to help build that speech production in his little brain. We love to read fun books to him that use prosody. One book that we love to read to him is a book called The Train to Timbuktu, and it gives a lot of opportunity for inflection, for prosody to come into play. If you've never read that one, it's a fun, little golden book. It's really old. That's by Margaret Wise Brown. But if you have a chance to look it up, really fun one for practicing prosody with young children. Just wanted to throw that in there. But most children have mastered spoken language by kindergarten, but the researchers have shown that prosody continues to develop in primary grades. So it's still a good opportunity to continue to teach that in speech as well as reading comprehension or reading text. So one thing that they found in this study, one significant piece, is that phrasing in speech is a significant factor affecting comprehension in reading. So phrasing in, being able to put words together, like we talked about on that first slide, recognizing when words go together in sentences. When students can do that, then it affects their reading comprehension in a positive way, both with speech and with text reading. So they concluded that that could really be a factor in future reading comprehension success if they have that phrasing and speech down. So overall, the studies show that prosody is an important piece. A connection exists between prosody and reading comprehension. Some of the conclusions that they came to is that decoding and automaticity have to come first. Definitely, I think that's a very clear conclusion. Speech prosody from an early age is foundational for text reading prosody and reading comprehension. There is a greater correlation between prosody and reading comprehension as the students get older and into higher grades. And then that phrasing as part of speech prosody can be an indicator of reading comprehension. But the main thing that is important to remember is that the earlier reading with prosody develops, the more likely later reading comprehension will occur. So I say, even if you're a teacher of preschool, kindergarten, first grade, whatever it may be, or even if you're just a parent with little children at home, start now. Start as early as you can. Model that prosody and let it get started now, because the earlier they get that, the more likely they will be to have good reading comprehension. Here are the resources that I used for my research. And I hope that you have learned as much as I did from this presentation. Have a wonderful day.